2, 1. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Donna Fiesel, and I'm your host of Donna's Edge Television Talk Show for Truth Matters. Thank you so much for watching every day, Monday through Friday, beginning at 1 p.m. as I get to ride home with you in the afternoon. It's always a fun ride. You can find us on television. We are syndicated on Abundance Television, found on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and their website, too, by the way. You can also find us on the Newscaster Studio, and that's the newscasters.com. All social media sites, we go there, YouTube, Facebook, the whole works. Anyway, we can get that information out there to you, and it's extremely important. So I have a good friend right here with me. His name is Attorney Don Brown. He's an author and a speaker and also candidate for U.S. Senate, and he's located in Charlotte, North Carolina. You know, it's one of my heart places. Phil and I lived there for many, many years, and I still love Charlotte. But I started noticing a decline when Barack Obama started running for office there. And so had some bad things happen. And so let's go ahead and talk about those. And I'm not including just the Democrats. I'm talking about rhinos, which fear me more than Democrats.
Well, you're right to be concerned about those rhinos. Let me tell you something. And we have example after example. Mm-hmm. Charlotte, when I moved, Donna, to the area in the early 90s after coming off active duty in the Navy, there was a 6-5 Republican majority in Charlotte. Now it's 11-1 in terms of the city council. And it's gone to hell in a handbasket. But this light rail system was initially put in under where this young girl was murdered last week so brutally, was initially put in under a Republican mayor. And unfortunately, mass transit can create a lot of problems, and there are no longer Republicans in charge, and the city leadership has gone to hell in a handbasket. So we're doing the best we can to. I don't live in the city of Charlotte anymore, like you don't live in the city of Charlotte anymore, but it's a situation where Charlotte's essentially become a big blue city. In some ways, like Chicago and Detroit and some of the other blue cities, and maybe not quite as bad as New York yet. Let me just put it this way. Some of the nutcases on the Charlotte City Council will rival the guy who is now about to become the nominee of the Democrat Party in New York. So that's how bad it's gotten. We'll continue to fight the good fight, see if we can talk some sense into some people.
Well, I'm talking rhinos today.
Right.
And the reason I'm saying that is, at least from a Democrat, you can at least say where the darts are coming to you from. Okay, but when you got a bunch of rhinos in charge, and I'm talking about not just big cities, not just Charlotte, North Carolina, I'm talking about small towns in Alabama where crime has just run rampant, and they're Republican mayors. So how can you explain that?
I think people get in office, and there's the old saying that power absolutes corruptly and absolute power corrupts. You see a lot of that going on. I bang on, our Republican Congress, and I've been banging on Republican Congress, like where's the Congress? So, for example, Trump's come in and has made amazing progress with executive orders since January the 20th, but Congress simply doesn't act. And they passed this big, beautiful bill thing, which had a lot of policy in it that we needed, but we still aren't attacking the national debt. But more to the point is the Department of Education, for example. Trump has called for its elimination, has used an executive order to basically defang it. Same thing with USAID, which was funneling our taxpayer money into a bunch of, communist NGOs, essentially. And the Congress is not, the Republican-controlled Congress still has not taken action to eliminate these agencies. And so you're correct. With Democrats, you can see out in the open where they're going. With rhinos, you really can't. And it's a dangerous situation they have to deal with. We continue to have massive spending, even under Republican Congresses, a $37 trillion national debt growing every day. You go to debtclock.org if you want to see where we are. And so it's a frustrating thing. It certainly is. And, we've got one running for U.S. Senate here, my opponent here in North Carolina, and a bunch of rhinos that are behind him. So we'll have to see how all that plays out. But it is a frustrating thing, and they're helping to. The problem with the rhinos, they're in bed with the Democrats on so much of this stuff. We've had, and I've been battling for our shrimpers in Eastern North Carolina. We have a shrimping industry, and there are 19 counties down there that are fighting because the North Carolina Senate, not the House, the Senate, which is Republican control, essentially voted to kill the shrimping industry in the eastern part of the state. And when I say the Senate, I'm talking about every member of the North Carolina State Senate, Democrat and Republican, except for 4 Patriot Republicans, voted to do that. And they did it because they're getting their pockets lined with political contributions, we believe. And so there are times that, you can't tell one versus the other. And the point you're raising is a good point. We got to be really, really vigilant to make sure that the Republicans that we put into office are truly constitutional conservatives and not going to get in there and become part of the system.
I was speaking with someone yesterday who is with the elections committee in Abbeville, South Carolina. And I just told him, I said, look, my dad was a Democrat, mother a Republican. So I thought everybody voted. I mean, because they really pushed it on their own agendas. And he was talking about the low voter turnout for mayor, city council, that kind of thing. And I said, well, what's the excuse? What are people telling you? And he said, well, they just don't see the point in local elections. And I said, but why? And he said, they just don't. And I said, but it starts at the bottom. And I'm naming a few towns. Okay, let's just go with Albertville, Alabama again. Okay, crime rate is just shot up. There are illegals all over the place. Phil and I, we go to Alabama once a month. I still have wonderful sponsors who are in Alabama. And so we go down there and we take care of the sponsors, do a few recordings, that kind of thing once a month. I refuse to stay in Albertville, Alabama at a hotel. And let me tell you why. So Phil and I were there a few months ago, nothing but partying. It was really loud. I mean, and this is a nice hotel. So I kept calling management and it's like, we need some rest. I'm recording bright and early in the morning and we've got to have some sleep. And so she said there was, of course, she can speak real good English herself, but she said, there's nothing I can do. And I said, well, I'm calling the police. So I called the police twice. They were not able to do anything with them as well. Why are the citizens not taken care of anymore in some of these towns?
Well, like you say, people say they don't see the point, but why don't they see the point? People just stick their heads in the sand and don't pay attention. That's part of the problem, and you have a situation there where local police are not responsive to disturbing the peace. And you had every right when you go in and you pay whatever you paid for that hotel room that night to expect and enjoy a decent night's sleep. You're not paying to go and be part of some loud party. And it's a frustrating thing. And there should be noise ordinances, especially in hotels, so that the police have an opportunity to do something. I don't know whether or not that is the case there in Albertville, Alabama, but there ought to be. If you go into a public accommodation, you are expected to be able to enjoy your privacy, and there ought to be certain ordinances that will allow the police to take action. They should have come and busted that party up, but it's a frustrating thing. I don't blame you for not staying there. There are places that I won't stay either. I was in Raleigh, and I was over there late one night and started to check into the DoubleTree out there near Crabtree Valley. The place looked like it was a bombed out crater, and the clientele was the clientele that you probably couldn't tell from other places in the country where there's a real high crime rate. And a lot of these, and that used to be an area that was a nice area, and to see the deterioration of a lot of these areas is pretty shocking. But I understand your frustration with that because I'm frustrated with it too. There's biggest danger we have is apathy. It goes back to the survey by George Barna, which came out right before the election in 2024. That something like 80 million Christians either don't vote or aren't registered, and our goal, our goal is going to be a way to help those people get aware of what's going on, understand their vote does matter, and then once they get active, we got to help them understand who are true conservatives and who aren't true conservatives. There's a lot for us to do, Don. I know you're doing the work, and it does get frustrating. All we can do is just keep working at it.
Well, I'm seeing a switch. Okay, so there's another town about 30 miles from Albertville. It's Gadsden, Alabama. This used to be a really high crime area. It was one of the bigger cities in the state. So what has happened is it's a switcheroo. Okay, so now Albertville, it used to be such it was a Mayberry type town. It's just turned corrupt. And so what the mayor and city council, they put pride on is, oh, the area is growing. We have businesses coming. It's mostly retail and restaurants that's coming in. And they need more industry,
Right.
know. But anyway, so the election happens. Less than 20% of those people in that town voted. Less than 20%. So they wound up getting what the mayor and the city council are all still there,
Right.
throughout this election. But what we're seeing is Gadsden, which is, as far as population, is 5 times bigger than Albertville. The crime rate is way down there, but then this little small town, it's one of the worst crime rates in the whole state of Alabama.
Yeah, and it isn't so much, a product. It isn't that there's a certain relationship between the population and the crime rate. It has to do with leadership. I mean, you look at what's happened in D.C. since Trump has federalized D.C. Even the Democrat mayor, Muriel Bowser, has acknowledged that the streets are now safe again. That's a large city. So it has to do with effective leadership. When Rudy Giuliani was the mayor of New York City, crime rates went way down because of effective policing that he put into place. He had been a U.S. attorney and had been a prosecutor and understood what it takes to bust up crime. So it's a matter not of the size of the population, as you pointed out, between Albertville and Gadsden, but rather it is about effective leadership and a determination to clean these cities and these towns up. And if you put rhinos or if you put Democrats in, you're not going to get them cleaned up. That's pretty much what it boils down to.
Yeah, it's just not going to be. It's just an unsafe area. And again, it's just totally different. Another little town, Atala, Alabama, is kind of between Albertville and Gadsden, and they cleaned that one up. I mean, and I'm going to tell you, this used to be a ruffian, but you have good leadership in there. They really care about the citizens. So why are people not voting for their safety, or why are they just not getting out there to vote for safety? Because that's huge.
I mean, I think they just, it goes back there under the delusion belief that a vote doesn't matter. You point in the Albertville, 20% voted, 20%. That means I'm not sure I want 100% voting, but I want conservatives voting. And that, if you're telling me 20% voted, that tells me a lot of conservatives stayed home and didn't vote and didn't take action. And so we've got to start through the churches, I think, but we got to start getting people mobilized. And folks there in Albertville are going to have to take, if they want to save their town, they're going to have to take matters in their own hands. And these areas like this motel you're talking about, where they're having wild parties, and other areas where it may seem unsafe to be on the streets. The citizens are going to have to demand accountability, or it's just going to go down. It's going to continue to deteriorate. Well,
there's one thing about growing a town, and this is what this mayor touts along with the city council. And this other thing is, Donna, Jesus loves everybody. I totally agree with that. I really do. He does love everybody. But you have to have some concern about your own citizens in your own town.
Well, the book of Romans also says that the government is God's avenger on earth to punish the wicked. Romans 14, I believe. And so we tend to forget that little part. So yeah, Jesus loves everybody, but that doesn't mean you don't punish. That doesn't mean that the government's job is not to punish evildoers or those who break the law and cause crime to infest itself in our cities and towns. So I run into these types of people all the time. I went overboard a little bit on a post, maybe condemning the murderer here on the Charlotte light rail. Somebody said, "Oh, Jesus wants to save him." I said, well, Jesus may want to save him. Jesus can save him if he wants to save him, but he still needs the death penalty. He needs to be swift and effective. So people just kind of take certain parts of the scripture out of context and don't consider the whole counsel of scripture, unfortunately.
Well, let's talk about this, because this guy, this is not the first crime this guy ever committed. I mean, he's had a history of it, and he continually let out. So what's that all about? Why can't we just keep these people in prison or install the death penalty? Something.
A couple of things. North Carolina has a death penalty on paper, but there's not been an execution since 2006. It's been on hold because of legal wrangling, and you may as well not have it if you're not going to use it.
Right.
Because you have to use it. Part of the purpose of it is to deter other crimes. Now, in terms of in terms of this revolving door policy where you have no cash bail, these criminals are let out. Yesterday, I saw a study that in the city of Raleigh, the other big blue city in North Carolina, in the last 10 years, in Wake County, they have released more than 800 inmates who, like the murderer on the Charlotte Light Rail, had at least 14 prior arrests, and some even more than that. So it's a revolving door. Now, why is it a revolving door? It's a revolving door in part. People get frustrated, and rightly so. But the system isn't designed to handle this. Why is this? Because we're spending so much money on the welfare state and not enough money on prisons and psychiatric hospitals. You know, whether you put them in a prison or a psychiatric hospital, you got to get them off the street. And our emphasis has been on, Obama phones and QE2 and QE3 and giving money to this person, that charity, and this charity, and not. So you cut the welfare state and you take care of criminal justice, which has to take a priority over that. So the fact of the matter is, the system can't handle all this stuff because it isn't built to handle this stuff because we have misallocated resources and we've misprioritized what we need to be working on. We need more prisons, we need more psychiatric hospitals, and we need to make sure that if we have to cut this welfare program or that welfare program to pay for it, we need to do that.
Well, I think we do too. And I'm a regular walking around gum chewing American here, and I've been paying taxes for a number of years. But I wanted to talk about this because you're not a career politician. You're a businessman. You understand where we are coming from as business owners and citizens of the United States. Within our own businesses, we have to have a balance in the budget. That's just the way it is. Okay, and I spend so much money on supplies. I spend so much on, electric, whatever I need to do to run the business, but it's a healthy balance. I'm seeing too much of an overthrow, and I believe in helping citizens. I actually believe in the welfare system. I really do, but not for those who choose it as a career choice.
Well, and the welfare system, I believe in welfare also, but through the church, not through the state. There might be certain instances where the state can provide some assistance, but if you look at what happened in Hurricane Helene, for example, here in the western part of North Carolina, FEMA simply got in the way and became an obstreperous criminal organization. FEMA needs to be eliminated. The most effective help came from Samaritan's Purse, from the Cajun Navy, and other wonderful, too many Christian private foundations and organizations. I can't even name them all. They came through. Say that again.
They came through.
Right. And so the church is primarily responsible for welfare, and these organizations that are set up to help feed, like Samaritan's Purse, and come in are going to be more effective than the government. And to the extent that governments are involved, I don't often quote Democrats. Tip O'Neill was right, though, when he said all government is local. He was right, and it goes back to what you were saying. People don't come out and vote in the mayor's race or a county commission race or a school board race, so you get what you get who you fail to vote for. But on the local levels where the help has to come, not on a federal level. And so we've heard the phrase public-private partnerships. It means more private, but it's the church. Jesus said, feed the hungry. Jesus said, take care of the poor. He said that, true and undefiled religion is to give the widows and orphans in their time of need in the book of James. So that's called to the church. And but the more we try to build a governmental welfare state, the worse it's going to get. And the more we do that, the more you're going to see scenes just like you saw in Albertville, because the money is being redirected away from criminal justice and away from police enforcement and away from psychiatric hospitals and away from, facilities to house people that want to break the law. So I think we have to understand that that we're going to have to reprioritize in order to get the situation fixed.
Yeah, you're going to have to, because I'll use Albertville again, okay? Because I've seen such a disaster in the past few years of this once wonderful town. Okay, so what they tout, the local officials, they tout, the area is growing. We have all these new, and it's, again, retail, restaurants, that kind of thing are coming in. They need more industry, but anyway, so that's what they tout. But the problem is you're doing a trade-off. You're doing, and by the way, a lot of these folks are in real estate, so they are renting homes out to the Haitians and the people who are coming in. And
Well, you talked about rhinos earlier. The rhino leader of the North Carolina Senate has been for years pushing casinos to come in areas where certain politicians own land. Of course, that happens. Their land value will increase. They'll make a ton of money off of it. But you're also pushing organized crime and all the riffraff that comes along with it. Certain controlled growth is fine, but you're correct. Growth needs to be industrial because that provides meaningful jobs over a period of time. As nothing wrong with service industries like restaurants and that sort of thing, but service industries are built around core industry. But you have to wonder sometimes when you get these politicians, they're talking about pushing growth. I mean, how much are developers contributing to their campaigns or their political action committees? You got to ask these questions too. So it kind of goes hand in hand. So, the purpose of government is not to actively try to promote growth, but to protect the constitutional rights of its citizens. Growth is something that takes place because of the law of supply and demand in the private markets. It's not government's job to try to engineer those types of things.
Well,
markets.
A citizen has to be alert. And now I'll just have to say, the minute we moved back to Alabama, I missed the Carolinas. I'm just telling you, I just loved it. But this is one reason we moved, is because we felt very unsafe, because the next town north of Albertville was the town I was living in. And I started noticing things. There was this little meth lab that somebody did on my land. I think I told you about that.
Right.
We were going through the land one day and started noticing, wow, Clorox bottles. Called the local police department. And this is what they said. Well, it could be a meth lab. And I said, look, we didn't do this, and I don't want to get in trouble someday. Somebody comes by and they see it out here thinking I did it. So they said, well, you'll have to go through the county. So I went through the county, who reverted me right back to this little town. And this is something else, and I've got it all on my cell phone. Okay, I'm so glad this was in text form. So the guy at the police department said, well, you do have cows out there. And I said, so my cows brought in the Clorox bottles, and also you could see a little burn area, where some brush had been burned. From my understanding, that's how you do meth. And then there were also like candy bar wrappers and stuff like that out there. And I said, yeah, my cows love a good Snickers bar.
Yeah, and they probably, your cows probably lit the bit lighter to put the grass on fire too, didn't they? So
I'm sure they did. So common sense stuff. I mean, it's just, and I could see the handwriting on the wall. So it's probably somebody's kids that have influence of some sort over town, so they're not going to do anything about it. But what I'm telling you is, from this one town in Albertville, it grows out to your other towns. So that's why it is so extremely important that you stay in touch with your fellow cities, your fellow towns. Find out what's going on there. Open your eyes and see what's happening.
Right. That's exactly right. That's right. Again, we got to go through the churches. We got to go through neighborhood watches. We got to get the word out. It's going to take grassroots activism to wake people up in order to start it goes back to a point we made earlier, because we saw that New York was relatively cleaner when Giuliani was mayor. We've seen what's happened in DC since Trump federalized it. Mm-hmm. And it is about leadership, and the grassroots are going to have to, and whether it's Albertville or anybody else, are going to have to take control of the situation, or else you're going to have lazy people are simply going to go to the polls, and it'll get worse and worse and worse. The point becomes unbearable. You hope it doesn't get so bad that it becomes unbearable, and then people wind up just leaving, and that's what's happened. That's happened to a lot of these big blue cities. Just leave, and Charlotte, as I mentioned earlier, when I moved to the area in the early '90s, was 6-5 Republican city council. That's all gone to hell in a handbasket, because a lot of people just have left the city in part because of regulations and taxes and crime. you know, and that will drive people away and it'll kill a town eventually. So again, grassroots organization, conservative grassroots organization, and through the churches is the only solution to try to get a hold of the problem that we're dealing with.
You know something, both my granddads, total differing. One granddad was a Republican, the other granddad was a Democrat. But now this is back in the day, okay? It's not like Democrats are now. So I remember them talking, and they were both so into, you know, the city, the churches, you know, the churches helping folks who are down on their luck. And I heard them talk about this one. It was like this front porch, this great big huge front porch with these really nice wicker chairs and stuff out there. And they would sit out there and talk, not argue, not I'm going to shoot you because you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. It was that we're talking, we're trying to get it together. And so they were talking about, there were some people in the neighborhood. The man had been out of work. Now he could have found a job somewhere. Apparently he was looking for a management position or something, who knows. But anyway, the kids were starving to death. I mean, you know, so the church got together, the church. Right. And they didn't want to wait on any and welfare was going on back then too. They had food stamps and welfare back then too. But the church didn't want to wait on it. So the church and the community started getting everybody together, and they were gathering up food. They were going, and this family had more food than they could eat. But that's the point. Fast, they went to it. And then when the Hurricane Helene came through, American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches, I'm telling you, the night of the hurricane, Philip Gilliland, who's with American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches, called me. And he said, we're gathering up food. You got any contacts out there? Because we used to live in North Carolina. And I said, yes, I do. So we got food there. And then he called me in that moment, started talking about FEMA's in the way. They don't even want us to go through. And so he was having a hard time then. Again, government got in the way of success.
Well, FEMA, I've been arguing on the campaign trail and continue to do so, is one of those agencies that needs to go. Mm-hmm. And what we need is a new unified command of the United States military, which I call U.S. Disaster Relief Command, so that on day one after a storm, we got helicopters coming in with generators, first aid equipment, and water, medicine, and the ability to evacuate people that need to be evacuated. That needs to happen from the military, working in conjunction with the cowboy churches and Samaritan's Purse and Cajun Navy and the Baptist men and other organizations that get in there, along with state and local governments. It needs to be more of a concentrated effort, but the federal government needs to be out of the way.
Absolutely. Let's go into a commercial break. We'll return in just a few minutes.
Twin City Used Car Sales has been serving drivers in the Northeast Alabama area for years with a quality selection of late model used cars, SUVs, and pickup trucks. On top of our extensive selection and competitive prices, we offer professional auto financing services for used car buyers of all credit levels. Whether you've just begun your search or you're ready to secure your next vehicle, at Twin City Used Car Sales, you will drive away with the vehicle of your dreams. The sales and finance staff at Twin City Used Car Sales looks forward to serving you, and you can apply for financing online before your visit to our used dealership in Gadsden, Alabama. Check us out on the web at twincityusedcars.com or go by our location at 901 First Avenue, Gadsden, Alabama. We sincerely look forward to serving you. At Lamone's Mexican Restaurant, located in Henniger, Alabama, and voted Best Mexican Restaurant of DeKalb County, Alabama 2020, we're here to serve you with authentic Mexican cuisine. Order easily online by going to lamonsmex.com or call 256-657-3999 to place your order. We're open Sunday through Thursday 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Friday and Saturday 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. Whether you're celebrating a cozy date night for two or a celebration for a crowd, at Lamone's you'll love our atmosphere and friendly servers. Thank you for dining with Lamone's Mexican Restaurant.
Are you ready? We all wonder what tomorrow will bring, but the future lays itself at the feet of the prepared and surrenders to the will of the persistent. It's not easy, but today shapes you so you can shape tomorrow. With Northeast Alabama Community College, when the future asks if you're ready, you can answer.
Yes.
Begin your future at Northeast Alabama Community College.
Ah, the Carolina sunshine. You can see it shining through right here. I look totally washed out. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Donna, and I'm your host of Donna's Age Television Talk Show. Again, thank you so much for watching. I have my friend Don Brown with me. He's an attorney, a businessman, very successful businessman, and that's what we need in leadership, because you talk our language.
Well, I don't know any other language to talk. That's the language I've grown up speaking, so we do the best we can.
And you absolutely do. So let's talk about a few other things. Let's talk about education. Okay, so we're seeing a lot of crimes with kids, teenagers, and I've mentioned this before to you. My friend Sebron, Charlotte, North Carolina, gave up teaching a few years ago because she heard this little chatter out there that one of the kids in school had a knife, was going to stab another kid. Well, she goes right to it. She goes to his backpack, pulls it out, gets in trouble. The mother comes up to the school, cursing everybody out, saying her son wouldn't do anything like that. And Sebron is the one who's hauled into the office for doing the right thing. So what's going on there?
What's going on there is the liberal influence over public education, where you have administrators. I mean, you look at the public education system, the biggest problem is not the good teachers like your friend, who are many of them who are called to teach and born to teach, yes, and get a bad rap a lot of times through circumstances not their own, but rather the administrators and the policymakers that are above them. Is the educrat system above the actual process of teaching in the classroom. I had a friend of mine, as an analogy, who was a great, and still is, so I won't go into too much information because I don't want to get her in trouble, but a great teacher in the Charlotte public school system. And she told me one day she was in the middle of preparing a class, and some assistant superintendent from Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools, making $250,000 a year, comes into the classroom and starts giving instructions on how to teach. And so the problem that your friend ran into is that very thing. You have a liberal Democrat educrat system, bureaucratic system, overlaying, and as part of the school system, that are basically punishing those who try to do good and rewarding those who try to do evil. And so in the public school system, you got to, I mean, one of the solutions, there are many problems with the system because of federal interference and otherwise, but you have to help teachers, and you do that by removing the educrats. You know, the educrats need to be removed. You don't need big, huge school office systems where you got, assistant superintendents of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. You need one superintendent with a manager, with a staff, of course. But you got to cut these positions out, and and you have to try to do the best you can, of course, to make it more attractive for folks to come into the system. And you've got to be able to punish, kids in the system. That kid with a knife should have been expelled from school because that was
along with his mother.
That's right, and not been allowed to return, rather than coddling the criminal. And we have a mentality of coddling the criminal that's got to come to an end. But it's happening in the school system as well. I know when I was in school all those years ago, if I got out of line a little bit, I would have an appointment with the Board of Education. I'm not talking about the elected Board of Education either.
Yeah.
It was effective. It was quite effective. And you got to get back to some of that, frankly.
Absolutely. And that's what we're not doing. We're not doing that. But now, what does this teach the kids as a whole? Okay, so you're seeing, first of all, there are people within the Board of Education who are making a higher salary than the President of the United States. That makes no sense to me whatsoever. And also, they're making more money than senators. I mean, it just goes on down over and over again. I mean, it seems like follow the money is the platform there, because I mean, when this is happening, I don't know what to say about this.
Well, you have the NEA, which is a liberal political cesspool.
Mhm.
And so you have, it isn't a teachers union to protect, educators. Is to push woke and liberal ideas into the
Mhm.
school system, and to grab power. And so it's a big monopoly. It needs to be busted up. And this is part of the problem. In fact, this is the biggest problem with most, I would argue, public school systems around the country. It is the bureaucracy, the liberal bureaucracy, that runs those systems. And I think we've got to understand that's got to be the target. You got to try to get the smaller classrooms in education. I mean, you look at education as a whole, education will only improve through competition, just like anything else. I've given this story many times, but, my daddy would kick my butt for running up $50 phone bills when I was in college. And because I would call home and talk for 30 minutes too often. And now we have, with AT&T being busted up, you and I are talking now on an amazing technological system that would not have been possible had AT&T not been busted up, because, you have all kinds. You got, WhatsApp, you got Facebook Messenger, you got all kinds of, we're on StreamYard. I mean, but that is a result of competition, of eliminating monopoly. The public system through the NEA is a monopoly, and that monopolies need to be busted up. Education, one of the keys to effective education is small teacher classroom ratio, so that you have a teacher over a fewer number of students, so that the teacher can get the students more attention. And then you got to get back to the basics of reading, writing, and arithmetic, and not every Tom, Dick, and Harry woke opportunity to put wokeism into the curriculum. And you got to be able to discipline kids. And it used to be back in the good old days, like when I was in school, if I had an appointment with the Board of Education, my mom and dad would support the school.
Mine too.
Mouth shut. He shouldn't have been doing this, rather than try to sue the school or try to punish a teacher who tried to save lives, as the case of your friend, by confiscating a deadly weapon from a knapsack, and then becomes the target of discipline herself because she's trying to save a life. It goes back to the verse in the Bible about they came to the point that good was evil and evil was good, and we're seeing a lot of that. We see a lot of it in the school system too. We got to recognize it. And when this goes back to a point that you made in the earlier show about folks not getting involved in local elections, and so you have radicals coming into school boards, and for the Democrats, politics is their god to a large degree, and they're going to be running in these local elections, and not just running in local elections. They're going to be running the most radical candidates they can, because they understand that they can have immediate effect on a local community by holding local offices. So you got to have conservatives on county commissions and in school boards who are willing to cut this bureaucracy out of the school system and try to shave it down, so that most of the money is going actually to teachers and to teaching, and not to educational bureaucrats. But you got to take control of your local county commissions and local school boards in order to do that. There's no other way around it.
Absolutely. Let's talk industry a little bit. Like it or not, AI is here. Okay. And a lot of folks are jumping on the bandwagon. Some are not, but we've got to get ready for it. Okay. So this is what I'm hearing. Okay. Through my research, AI is here. A lot of money, and a lot of that is going to go through tech jobs. So people need to get over this thing, tech jobs is working in a nasty, dirty foundry. It's not that anymore. Okay, a lot of this is through computerized. You can actually go to a tech center and take classes if you would like to be a veterinarian, if you would like to get into the medical industry, that kind of thing. So those jobs have totally changed from in the 1960s or whatever people are talking about. So let's talk about this. Okay, so AI is here. We need to get folks more educated. I'm talking like fast track education on AI through technology. How can that happen?
Well, it's got to be that type of education has to be quick and easily and readily accessible to the public. And you're talking about community colleges and trade schools. That's the most effective way to make that happen. And even getting into the high schools, and even before that, if you can, to a degree, But we have to understand that that type of training can't be just reserved for prestigious universities that people can't afford. And so the push has to be to make education local and education accessible. And I think through community colleges and tech schools is the best way to make it happen as quickly as possible. And so, but you're talking about educational funding, I mean, where is our funding going to go? I mean, is it going to go to woke programs? Is it going to go to hiring, the deputy superintendent for DEI or whatever it is they have at Charlotte Mecklenburg School? Or is it going to go to be spent, to create an effective AI program at Central Piedmont Community College? We've got to make choices on how we're spending our money there. We got to cut the woke, we got to cut the education bureaucracy, and we got to focus on what I call hands-on educational opportunities, whether it's AI or welding or electricity as an electrician or whatever the training might be, a nurse, nurse practitioner or whatever it might be. That training has got to become easily accessible for the average Joe and Jane on the street in order for us to remain competitive. So it's a matter of steering us in the right direction in terms of prioritizing budgets and understanding what the goals need to be, given our, very, very quick evolution into the world of AI, as you pointed out.
I've got a perfect solution here. Okay. And this came from talking with a guy who came and helped with our new house on some electrical work. We wanted to add a few things to the house. And so, he brought another young guy with him. To me, if you're younger than 50, you're a young guy. So I said, you know what? You are to be commended. And he was really happy. And, he had that was his truck. I mean, so this guy really he's doing really well for himself. And I said, I'm commending you. And I said, how did you get your education? And he said, through the local tech college. Yeah. But he started in high school. And so this is what he did. He started taking classes while he was still in high school. He walks across the stage with a high school diploma and a partial degree from a college, and I mean, he did that. Well, then he's telling me about all of his friends, and we already knew this was happening, but he was telling me about his friends who went to college. They have all this, they're saddled with debt, college debt. They didn't do it the way he did. Now, they kind of made fun of him for doing it the way he did it. But he said, you know what, my truck's paid for, my house is paid for. I mean, he's telling me all these things, that he's been able to do, not being saddled with college debt. I love college. I went. I really love it too. But there are some folks who are paying, I'm talking into their 50s, they're still paying on college debt. You're not getting ahead that way.
And a lot of that debt, in many cases, is for worthless types of liberal arts degrees, which are never put into the workplace. I mean, there's nothing wrong with studying, the history of French literature or whatever it might be, but you don't get hired if you have a master's or even a doctorate in the history of French literature, unless you can find some liberal college to hire you as a professor. But the point of the matter is, people are running debt up on worthless degrees. And even if you have a worthwhile degree, so for example, you can go to Duke University and become an engineer, which is more of a practical degree, you're still running up unless you just had the money to pay the thing. If you borrow the money to go to school there, you're running up hundreds of thousands of dollars even for a worthwhile degree. Whereby these engineering programs are available at public universities, public colleges, and start bringing them into the tech schools as well. So people got to be smart about how we're spending our money on education, because you're right. I think we maybe talked about the story about the guy who had gotten a master's from Harvard was sitting around and was mad because he was about to get foreclosed on, and the electrician comes to cut his electricity off, and the electrician is getting paid six figures, and went to the tech school, and the Harvard grad is can't find a job because he got an impractical degree and has huge debt. So people just got to use common sense here. I mean, common sense says go to the trade school. Common sense says, don't spend tons of money on public, secondary education when you don't need to. I know that, and there were one thing they're doing right in California when I was living there is, here in the South, we've had this mentality is, as soon as I graduate, I'm going to Bama, I'm going to Carolina, I'm going to State, I'm going to Duke, I'm going to Wake Forest. The mentality would go straight into a four-year school. In San Diego, friends at our church, they were going to the community college immediately, whatever the community college was, to take your pick out there and saving a lot of money, and even living at home and taking the college courses for 1/100th of the price. And if they want to transfer, they could transfer. You don't have to transfer though, really, anymore. But we just got to be smarter, because the debt problem is a big problem in this country. No nation can survive on insurmountable debt forever, nor can a family household. And you're talking about degrees from these universities that are more than a mortgage would be. And again, it goes back to, we've got to speak out about rethinking the whole educational process and how it should work in this country.
Well, you can still go to college, but you can do it the smart way. So I know a number of young people who have done it the smart way. So this is what they did. They took a tech courses while they were in high school for a couple of years. They wound up again walking across the stage with a 2-year college degree already. Okay. Then you can go to work for a company. I know I worked at GTE. What they would do is reimburse you your college courses.
Right.
Now, you had to sign a waiver with them that you would be with them a couple more years, and you had to have a particular grade point average. You couldn't go party all the time. You actually had to, get right down to the nitty gritty and learn something and make good grades. So this is the smart way to do it. Go to the tech school for a couple of years while you're still. Your parents need to wake up. Okay, you need to think about this now. It's going to save you a ton of money too. So let them go for 2 years while they're in high school, get that little 2-year degree, and then go to work for a company and talk with the company about reimbursing you for your college. Because companies, manufacturing, whoever, they want well-educated employees. They want that. But if you get in there, I'm not talking about getting into a company like, I want to start at the top. You can't do that. You need to start at the bottom and work your way up.
Right.
That's the only way you can be successful. That's the only way.
Right. You're right about that. That's exactly right. And that is a great way to go. But you're right. Do it the smart way or do it the dumb way. It's pretty easy to make a choice. What choice are you going to make?
I have a niece that's so funny. So she started going to college, and she was taking acting, for goodness sakes. And the parents kind of went along with it for a while. And I'm sitting here like, well, we're in Alabama. I kind of doubt that there's going to be a big, call for that. But I didn't say anything. It was none of my business. So anyway, the dad finally put a clamp on it, and he said, no, you've got to stop taking, unless you're going to move to California, which I know you don't want to do. And now I think Atlanta, different places. Charlotte is another movie place. But that's what she was doing. I mean, she was just going partying all the time and taking acting classes. And it cost them a ton of money, to do that. So as parents, we need to put their head on straight, and it's up to us, not just, and that's another mentality that the left and a few rhinos have put in place by stupid television shows that people watch. It's like, oh, let them be free. And I believe in letting kids be free to a degree, but I'm saying you need the guide. We need good guidance. That's why I'm so into you running for this office, because, and I'm bragging on you because I know you won't brag on your own self. But what I'm saying is you're a successful businessman. You're a good mentor. I go to you. Like when I want suggestions about running my business, I'll run something by you because I know you're successful. We need good mentors.
Well, experience is the best teacher if we take the experience and use it the right way. And, I made a lot of mistakes myself, but you learn from your mistakes, and hopefully you learn from your mistakes.
Yes.
So experience is really the best teacher. Even when you're coming out of, I deal with young lawyers coming out of law school who are bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and the things you don't get taught in any profession, whether it's the law or engineering or anything else, are greater than the things you do get taught. In other words, the things don't get taught in school are most of what we deal with in the real world. What we do get taught in school is just a microcosm of what we deal with in the real world, and a lot of stuff we don't even use. Mm-hmm. There are courses we take in college that we'll never use. The courses we'll take in law school that we'll never use. It's good to take them at a time. But experience is the best teacher, and longevity of life is the best teacher. And it's important to understand that. Well, that's why it's important. That's why I like going back to the trade school idea, or even going back to the scenario you suggested, where some of these kids can get the good work with companies and have the company then reimburse part of the college expenses or all the college expenses because you're getting hands-on experience while you're getting the education. And to me, the education is just like some icing on the cake, but experience in the real world is the real education. And so I just try to use common sense experience from the real world. And we've had to make payroll when you've had to deal with IRS issues and all those other kind of stuff. You know, you kind of learn the hard way, but what do they call it? The school of hard knocks. I think I've been through some of that. So if that works, then so be it.
That's what it's all about. Is that experience. Now, that's another thing. And here I keep talking about tech schools, but it is so true. So I know a lot of instructors tech schools who actually have that experience. And so what I'm hearing the students say is, wow, it's really been good, because they're telling me like what the actual things you actually run into on the job. And what's wrong with starting out with an apprentice? I mean, working for an apprentice is a wonderful way to gain that experience you'll never get. I'm not bashing college. I'm not at all. I love it. Oh, I'm still going. I mean, so, but what I'm talking about is real life experiences and having a good mentor.
All right. Well, I think once we understand it, and I'm not bashing college either. I mean, I had a great time also, except for I think we got to understand that is kind of like the icing on the cake, but it's not the cake. The real life experience is the cake, and education can help. And in some cases, I mean, depends on what you're doing. It's the right type of education, whether it's trade education, can make all the difference in the world. You know, if I learn how to go in and do wiring in electrical school, that education is directly hands-on with what I'm going to do the rest of my life. But if I'm reading about Madame Bovary, it's nice to read about Madame Bovary, but I'm not sure how much Madame Bovary is going to help me either in the courtroom or on a political circuit or as a prosecutor or whatever I've done. So, you know.
I'm trying to think of where I would have used that in anything I've ever done in my career.
Nothing wrong with Madame Bovary, you know, if you just want to at the beach and, you know, want to lay on a hammock and forget stuff for a while, but then when it's time to go back to work, it's not going to help you much.
Okay, one more thing on tech. I promise I'll get off of it. Okay, so I know a guy who lives in Rainsville, Alabama. Okay, this guy, tech all the way. He's a welder. Okay, so he started out, he went to tech college back in the 70s, and was one of the smart ones, and took welding, worked for a company, made a lot of good money, no college debt behind him, all that kind of good stuff. So I've looked at his progress throughout his life. He's carried that with him forever. So what he decided to do was go at it on his own. Did really well. You know why? Because he worked for a good company and it was a good mentor. Then I know people who've actually bought the company out from the person they worked for, you know, because the person got up in years. But now I'm getting back to this guy again. Okay, so then he retired. You know what he does now?
What's
He
that?
works on a contract basis now for companies because he's he's renowned. This guy is like, he's the welder of the world. And so what he'll do is he'll say, you know what? Maria and I decided we want to go to Hawaii. So I think I'm going to go call one of those guys at manufacturing companies. They'll let me train the remember. And that's what he does. So, and he makes good money doing that. So, I mean, basically, and makes more money probably doing it part-time, working a month out of the year than most people do, you know, on a regular job.
It's a good
Because
gig.
he's got the expertise.
It is a good gig. More power to him. You know, it's great when you get to that point. You can travel to Hawaii and work at the same time and make it a business trip, you know, and have that kind of flexibility because he's earned it, and he has earned that through the expertise he's gained over the years, you know, and so more power to him.
Okay, now let's go ahead and talk about running for office. We're forgetting that. Okay, so you're running for U.S. Senate. Okay, now, and I wanted to thank you again. And I try to do this every time you're on the show. I try to remember we're friends, and sometimes I just forget. Thank you for your service.
Yeah,
That's ultimate right there. Okay, that's ultimate training. So thank you for that. And then also you're an author and a speaker. And so let's talk about a few of your books as well and how folks can contribute to your campaign.
Well, we do need all the help we can get in the campaign. We can go to Brown, BROWN, FORNC.com. That's Brown, FORNC.com. The establishment wing of the Republican Party is attempting to cut off our ability to raise funds And what we need is grassroots support. You know, I mean, my opponent, with the help of the Republican Party, tried to throw a $35,000 a plate fundraiser. Of course, our people, can't write $35,000 checks. At least most can't. But what we need is $35 checks, $135 checks, $350 checks from 1 million people. And the only way it goes back to something we talked about earlier, the only way we're going to take this country is from the grassroots up. It's going to have to be we the people. So any help we can get there will be great.
Yeah, but let me break in there, because I saw an article where this person in this article actually put you way up there, number one.
Well, yeah, I mean, we have done very well in spot polls. We won a number of spot polls, and
without the establishment money,
right? But see, that's one of the reasons that they're concerned. So we had the chair of the North Carolina Republican Party try to endorse, and about 3 other ones try to endorse my opponent Mike Whatley against the rules of the party, of both the national party and the state party, which require neutrality during a primary, and they just broke the rules. And then they didn't tell the truth about what the rule really said. The state party rules do not allow any state officer to break neutrality before a primary is over. Neither do the national rules. There's a national rule 11 they tried to hide behind, which allows the national party to endorse a candidate before a primary, but only if there's only one candidate running, and that is after the filing deadline is over. And we had the state chair and 2 others simply twist and not tell the truth about that rule said in order to try to push my opponent, because they're afraid. They know that if there's an even-keeled campaign, and it should be up to the Republicans in North Carolina to decide, not anybody else. If there's an even-keeled campaign where we're debating over and over again, this race will be over before it starts. We will wipe the floor with the guy we're running against. But so they're trying to protect him by essentially cheating. This is why we need grassroots support. Either we the people are going to take back our country or not. It boils down to that. So we want folks to go to brown4nc.com. If you can organize a fundraiser, I'm happy to come speak. We need all the help we can get, but we got more momentum than any candidate right now, and we're going to continue to push that. We're all over the state of North Carolina, over half the counties we visited so far, and we'll continue to do that. I was in just this past few days. We're in Pamlico County in the great city of Chocowinity near Washington. We've been in Craven County. Came back, and Monday we were in Wake County. Yesterday in Moore County and Pinehurst, as a matter of fact. Today back in Mecklenburg County, and then we'll be on the road again in the next few days. But we are everywhere, all over the state, getting to meet people and pushing the message that we've got to take care of this national debt and attack it. We've got to stand for medical freedom so that never again can they force masks on our faces and deadly jabs in our arms and no microchips into us either. And I'm going to push for legislation to protect against that. And we're going against these rogue federal judges that basically stepped away from the Constitution. So it's a message that we're pushing strong. We'll continue to push it. It's the message that we need. And so all the help we can get, we'll take. brown4nc.com. Really appreciate it, Donna.
Absolutely. Don, thank you so much for being with us on the show today, as always. And you be safe out there on the roads as well. We're out there looking out for you. Vote for Don. Okay, all my friends in North Carolina, vote for Don. Okay?
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to have to call it a day. Thank you again so much for watching. Continue sending emails, by the way, Donna at donnasedge.com. Don, hang around. I got to get you set up again, okay? All right, we'll see you guys later. Bye.